What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to Stocks by the Numbers. I wanted to do a very quick update trade here in the short term for you guys, something I literally just noticed here as this company is hitting record highs and whatnot. Name of the company, Apple Incorporated, ticker symbol AAPL, listed here on the NASDAQ. Now, obviously, in this market, in this democratic administration economy, even though everything is going to shit, apparently somehow, some way, all you have to do is own tech stocks, and they're all going to continue to hit new highs and fly to the moon. Now, obviously, overall, under this administration, that is probably the best strategy that you can take. However, we always have to take what the market gives us, not force trades, and right now the market is giving us a brand name company, in my opinion, that is setting up and preparing for a pullback here. Now, this is an all-time chart here on Apple, obviously bouncing all over the place, really started to take off in the early 2000s. That was with like the iPods and everything, and since then has absolutely been off to the races. In my opinion, really for no reason. However, I'm sure a lot of people watching the video do like Apple products and probably, line up and buy everything that they release. So obviously, just as Warren Buffett said, the product line is very sticky and people just attach themselves to Apple products and need to own everything that this company makes and sync everything up together, whatever. It's entirely your own prerogative. It's your money. But overall, this is the top trend line here that I drew out. And as you can see, obviously it cut through the chart here, but I extended it because there's a lot of connections happening here. We'll look at that in a second. But of course, this is coming from the bottom all the way up, and you can see that it's kind of been bouncing and riding above this bottom yellow trend line here. I'm going to close down the steam, my apologies. But zooming in here, we can see now going in a 5-year chart, you can see how it like tightened up here and probably should have pulled back. However, it broke up and continued to hit new highs. This was just a trend line going across the top highs here. And this is going back basically about a year ago. I kind of just drew these trend lines here because the stock was just bouncing around in this channel here and has recently broken out and hit new highs, right? But if we zoom in here, no, that's a little too close. That's still a little too close. No, we'll go 1 year. Okay, so we got the 1 year. Okay, now look at this. This top trend line here was the all-time high that we drew. This was coming off the lows that cut through the chart, and you can see how everything met up at basically around this level. Look at this, 128.5 down to about 125, right? So in those $3 range there, we had all of these trend lines crisscrossing themselves right here around this time frame. So obviously the stock was either going to break and seriously crash or bounce like we see here and lift up, right? So now this became the bottom of our rising wedge, which in my opinion obviously does look like it's setting up here as of late. It also bounced off this bottom blue trend line, which was that channel that we spoke about going back about a year. And of course, right as it broke below these all-time high and low yellow trend lines, it bounced right back up several days later. So that, in my opinion, may have been like the low of the low that you may get here. Unless, of course, another big market crash happens, and then you could potentially step into Apple shares for, down here in the 120s or maybe even the high 1-teens. But since then, really been off to the races here. $183.79 a share, up almost 3 points or about 1.5% here on the day. And again, you can see going back right here as the bull dropped, all of a sudden, everything became fine, right? I mean, these companies are laying off thousands of people. They're announcing every day that these AI systems are basically replacing humans in every aspect of business. But for some reason, these stocks continue to go higher. And listen, I get it on the profitability side now, right? Because obviously you have less payroll expenses because you're just using machines and AI. But again, at the end of the day, when I initially made the video, it was about a year ago. It was like right here, like May 20th. And as you can see, before that point, it was very rocky and bouncing around, and the stock was crashing down and basically hit new 52-week lows here, essentially. And you can see here, it had a bounce up, and then it pulled back down, and again to the bottom trend line of that channel now, and then basically just ran all the way up from, what was this, 128 to north of 175, right? Then it pulls all the way back as of late that we saw, and has since been climbing and rallying back up there. So, technically you could say, of course, as I did back in that video, that the stock is tremendously overvalued because now, even though they are doing good business, again, we go back to 2022, about $400 billion in revenue, and we're sitting here with a market cap of close to $2.9 trillion. So the company's only paying out 0.5% dividend for you to own it. Last time we looked at it, I believe the PE was maybe around 21 and change, but of course it pulled back and was all the way down here at the 120s. However, now the PE obviously has climbed as tech has been moving. It's basically the only sector that's performing well under the Biden administration, and we have here a PE of approaching 31. Now, granted, again, a lot of the numbers do look healthy, and overall the company does beat earnings more than they miss. This was obviously the period ending December, usually their biggest quarter, and you can see the company came in about 3.4% shy there on the revenue side. But overall, they do usually beat earnings on the top and bottom line. So, again, you have your sporadic misses, but, I could understand a little bit of fluctuation here, but overall, 7-8 times total yearly revenue. This is why I said, even in the original video, I understand we were in a massive downtrend, so I was kind of just alerting all of you to the serious potential pullback and serious downside that Apple stock could incur. And obviously, as we saw here, I believe it was May 20th when I made the video. And as you see again, we bounced up a little bit, we bounced down a few dollars, and then it kind of just rebounded and went back higher. So obviously, if anyone was holding Apple, you didn't take too much of a hit here. But as of late, again, you can see since the ball dropped, it bounced off that bottom, intersected with all of those trend lines, and has since been climbing and rising here. And if we draw our trend lines here, we basically have a massive rising ascending wedge that has been taking place since year to date here. I mean, look at that. Rising, the tightening, and now we are approaching the apex. Now, if the apex, like I said, if this is accurate, again, I just kind of drew these trend lines and drew this out just to give you guys a generalized idea. However, it did just bounce off the high and then kind of reapproach the low and is now at like the higher half of this price wedge range. So that's why I'm kind of making the video now, because it might not be the best. I mean, it might not be the worst time, to actually start positioning yourself in here and maybe grab a couple of puts here on this situation. Because in my opinion, we are in a rising wedge. I do think it's only a matter of time. This is showing us Friday the 23rd. So that's what I mean. In my opinion, maybe inside of the next week or two, could happen any day. But in my opinion, inside of the next week or two, it will most likely break down out of this wedge, and minimum, you can hit this top trend line again, as I put a price marker here about 166.25, you could say. However, again, that doesn't mean it has to stop there. It really doesn't, because again, I did say in my opinion that the stock is overvalued, and it was basically in this downward channel for quite some time here, going all the way back to the tail end of 2021. So we did just have this recent breakout. However, again, if it can break out of this wedge, pull back, and then potentially pull back and start bouncing around these trend lines again, getting back into this channel, obviously we're going to see a stock that is going to pull back into the potential 150s and 140s. And if you guys can buy some puts at least several months out, remember, like I always say, time trumps strike price. So if you can step in here on some Apple puts and buy time, obviously the company just hit its supposed all-time high or whatever the heck is going on, right? And everything's been absolutely raging. However, basically every economic headline that we read is negative and not positive. So that means that shit should be going down. It shouldn't be continually rising and hitting new highs. Especially a company like Apple, in my opinion, which was already undervalued here at 130, 140, 160 a share, and now it's up to almost $184 a share. Now, of course, again, anytime a stock hits record highs or record lows, that technically is viewed as uncharted waters, and anything can happen. So the stock can easily pop up here, 187, 188, and go to the top of this trend line here before, pulling back and making that the new all-time high there for itself. However, again, this apex, it seems to be in a rising wedge here year to date. This is right here when the bull dropped in 2023, and I'm sure you guys see this movement as well. And again, we're not bashing on the company overall as a whole. However, in the numbers, technically, in my opinion, this is massively overvalued. And I understand tech has been rising, but it shouldn't be rising this much. So to have the company forming an ascending wedge here since year to date, and you're telling me inside of the next week or two we could have a potential apex hit with a breakout happening, I'll believe it. Simple logic and common sense trumps all. Take what the market gives us. Don't try to force your way in and guess here what Apple is going to do. Wait for it to develop its pattern and set itself up so that you can easily say, okay, now we can look at it and we can see that it's about to sell off. And hey, like I said, if we step in here when it's at, 184, 185, and then it kind of just sideways is out for a week, but you stepped in and let's just say you bought like 170 puts or 165s, and this actually does come to fruition inside of the next couple of weeks, as you see here, looking like the first week of July, we can potentially hit this trend line. Let me tell you something. You're going to make phenomenal profits, hand over fist. Easy money. Don't force trades. Take what the market gives you. And even switching over here to stock charts, I wanted to show you guys real quick. The MACD obviously is just out of control, significantly higher than a lot of other stocks we looked at because the market loves Apple. And again, under Biden administration, tech is basically the safest place. And every time we look at tech in a situation like this, and you see it consistently rising and hitting new highs, and people are saying, should I jump in and just ride the wave? And you have the other half of people saying, all right, it's way too high, it's got to come back down to earth. All of a sudden, when things get out of control, that's when everything comes back down to earth and just becomes a little bit more realistic. So that's why I'm saying with all of these indices climbing and rising as of late on all of this negative news, and then, of course, you have Apple just breaking out and hitting new highs. I mean, just look at this trend here over the last several months. That's why I'm saying what goes up must come down. And again, not bashing the company as a whole, but breaking out of that wedge, that's what I mean. And something like this, pulling back to this moving average, even this 50-day of the high 170s, or this bottom Bollinger Band here, 169.25, that would be phenomenal, obviously, if you jump in on the put side. And if we could potentially get a pullback here to this 200-day, where, in my opinion, it should be, and really break down, obviously, you would make some serious profits there if it hits this 200-day moving average. But the MACD, again, does look like it's rising. The stock has been absolutely on a tear, and that's why I feel, in my opinion, is ready for a pullback. We got the RSI here at about 72, and as you see here as of late, the last time it hit that RSI north of 70, that's when the stock had a pullback for several days. So now it's been up for a few days. Excuse me. Now it's been up for a few days. The RSI is now back above 70, so that's why I'm saying probably due for a pullback here. And again, on the weekly, just look at this. Look at this MACD absolutely just flying to the moon. That's what I mean. It is not realistic. You can't have this happen for just a handful of select companies and act like it shouldn't happen or affect every other company around it. So that's why I'm saying, obviously if you're betting against the situation during this time frame, you're extremely pissed off because you're watching it go higher when you know it should be lower. However, again, we kind of know we're in like a bullshit fugazi market. So again, you have to take what the market gives you. And if you're right 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 times, those wins will outweigh those losses. And, if the market's coming at you sideways and slant-eyed with some bullshit happening here, and you happen to take a loss, take it in stride and don't beat yourself up. Because remember, if we had a more realistic market, chances are you would have been right on whatever the call was. So don't beat yourself up. But again, look at these just huge candles chunking up, slight pullback to the mid-Bollinger Band, and then basically just up and away. I mean, it's just unrealistic. The company was already overvalued here, trading about 6.5, 7 times yearly revenue, which we don't see from anybody, for the most part. And then, of course, it just bounced and continued to climb higher. So really has to pull back here. And again, you can see the RSI on the weekly here approaching 74. I mean, that's ridiculous. The last time, basically every time it got above 70, you can see that the stock either went sideways or immediately pulled back and sold off. So it's basically been raging for about 6 months, and I think it's due. Sometimes it's just that simple. But I'm going to end it there. So once again, this is Stocks by the Numbers. I want to thank you guys for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop down in the comments section. I'm usually very quick to reply. Just like everyone on YouTube says, thumbs up, algorithm, helps me get more eyes on the channel. Like the video, share the video. And of course, like I always say, I also have the personal Discord set up. I posted in the description of every single video that I post. So if you ever want to come in and just BS back and forth, if you have a couple of finance questions, or if you've never bought stock options before, and you're thinking about, after seeing a video like this, buying some Apple puts, but you're not sure how, come in. Again, we can always have a back and forth, talk about the market, talk about anything. I'm always here for you guys. But again, if I have a short-term trade idea of something in the moment, as I said, it is much easier for me to just type it into the Discord and say, oh, I like this right now, or I think this is going to start, pulling back and selling off. It's much easier for me to immediately just type it into the Discord and you guys have the recommendation that quickly. Because if I make even a 5-10 minute video, I have to record the video and then wait for the video to upload to YouTube, and then they do the copyright checks, and then it has to format it from standard def into high def for everybody. So even a 5-10 minute video sometimes could take upwards of an hour plus. So we know how quick the market moves. That's why if you do have a moment, get on Discord, jump in the server, just kind of hang out in there. And if I have something to say, I'll definitely let you guys know. But AAPL, Apple right here, rising 6-month wedge, about to pull back here, roughly 15-20% potentially. I think could make you guys some money here in the short term, and that's why I wanted to make a short-term trade idea video. And I'll end it there. Moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky and volatile and uncertain. So I want to wish everyone success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good day, guys.